Let's stay with developments around the story and speak to Lebo Ramafoko, the Executive Director at Oxfam, as well as a GBV expert. Lebo, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. I mean, what do you make of the handling of this entire issue since we heard the first allegations emerge?
Thank you for having me. I mean, I think it's an obvious one that the president wants to follow due process, but it is also one that sends a message that says, and we've seen it over and over again, when the allegations are against a powerful man, they are then given the right to issue statements, and even the police handle them very differently than they would handle anybody else. And I think that while one hears what the president is saying, the biggest problem with that is that is sending a message that depending on how powerful you are going to be dealt with kid gloves. And therefore, unfortunately, what the president says about his seriousness, the seriousness of his cabinet to deal with GBV, the speed at which this is taken, the way in which the responses are, do not show what the president always speaks about.
So I suppose then it didn't shock you when you were also looking at, the statement that was released by the minister, and I'm listening to you. It says that it is unfortunate that these allegations are being used as nothing but a smear campaign against me, fashioned to narrow and selfish political ends. And he says that he plans to also continue with his work. So it doesn't surprise you at all then that he continues to stay in office, listening to what you're saying?
It does not. And I think for me what happens, and I think because he is a man with a lot of considerable power, I think it also shows how tone deaf that he is. The fact of the matter is there is somebody who basically laid charges of sexual assault. So this is not hearsay. This is not one camp basically saying you are alleged to have done this. There is a person who went out. The minister does not say, I was not even at that lodge, or I don't, no, you can't place me there. Therefore, this is a smear campaign. I think what he is saying is the fact that this woman is reporting this case, this woman does not have agency, this woman has been sent by somebody else. And I think, any other man, if you think about it, would not have the kind of machinery that the minister has to be issuing statements. And I think that is why I am talking about when you are in a cabinet that says they take GBV seriously, the fact that he was allowed to make that statement in itself, regardless of what the facts were, shows how tone deaf this cabinet is. Because what the minister or the president would have done was to say to the minister, I am going to wait for due process, but you do not issue any statements at the moment, because there is a woman who has relative less power than a minister who has laid a case. Because we need to role model as society how our government treats women who have reported the case. So it is no different from any other case where when a woman lays a charge against a man of power, it is that woman that is labeled to have sinister motives. It becomes politicized. And therefore, for me, that's just a start. Why issue a statement when somebody has gone to the police, and on the one other hand, the president is saying we want legal due process? Where is legal due process when that statement is so violent to the woman who laid the charge? It is accusing her of being used politically, and it is not waiting for the due process. So in this matter, who is supposed to wait for due process? When it comes to suspending the minister, we must wait for due process. But when it is about this woman being vilified publicly by a powerful man, we are not waiting for due process. So it is double talk, it is fork tongue talk, it is hypocrisy, and it is, unfortunately, according to the script of what we are used to from this government, from this society, where gender-based violence is concerned, where cases are being reported.
How much of a complication and a difficult conversation does this then put on the table, given the fact that the president talks about an upcoming gender summit, another one to the one that we also saw in 2018?
You know, I really think that, and I think this is an issue about South Africa. We are very good at talking and we are very good at saying things, but we are not as good, especially this government, at following up this process. It's yet another talk shop. It's yet another expenditure where we are going to be sitting in a room, but our practice does not show that the talk follows, the action follows on the talk. So it's yet another talk shop in my view. And I think this case in a lot of ways is a lost opportunity in the way in which, from a leadership point of view, we ought to be leading by example.
Should he be stepping aside, pending the due processes that you are also talking about? Because as you say, these statements, the statement he's released comes as there are calls for due processes to be allowed. And in his own statement, he says that law enforcement authorities must be allowed to, carry out their own investigations. But should he be stepping aside and leaving office for a while to allow these due processes to unfold? What do you think?
It would be a great, great symbol if he chooses to do so, or if the president asks him to do so. It would absolutely put action when they say put your money where your mouth is. It would definitely be a good sign and a good step. But I think as women in South Africa, we have actually realized that we do not have a government with the maturity to act in a manner that you would want them, that what they say or the way that they act follows what they say. However, and this is my bone of contention, we are already seeing duplicity and hypocrisy in a fact that almost up to script, and we have seen the cases happen that way. It is the woman that is vilified. To even put in the statement that let the law take its course, to even release a statement is a form of violence. So even before the woman who has reported basically gets grilled by a very alien justice system where women feel secondarily victimized, a minister has already used their position of power. So that action already tells you that this is a man who is tone deaf. And most probably because he comes from a government that really is not committed to solving gender-based violence or sexual assault or any crime against women by issuing the statement. You see, for me, you can say, I'm going to wait for due process to happen. But when he starts using his power, his positionality to start issuing statements that basically says, well, this is a mere fight and whatever, he is actually inflicting more violence on the woman. The case has not been heard. We saw what happened with Kwezi on the trial, where buses and buses of women were intimidating her, and all the activists from 1 in 9 and all others who were out there for her, where all of a sudden the one who dares lay a case against a powerful man becomes the hunted, becomes the one that, in the case of Kwezi, goes into exile, even in a democratic South Africa. That statement in itself is tone deaf and it's violent. If the minister wants due process to be done, the first thing that you do is you don't issue statements. You actually wait for the due process to take place. If we are to believe that he is not being removed due to due process. But it's got nothing to do with due process. He's allowed to be as cocky as ever. He's allowed to not even reflect. He's allowed to not even say, you know what, this is a serious problem in South Africa. I would want to step down to allow for due process to take place. I hope that everybody will be dealt with fairly. He is already demonstrating what we know, unfortunately, in South Africa, that this matter is dealt with. And he's being violent to the person who laid the charge.
All right. Lebo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's see then, as you say, these power dynamics that are also compounding this particular situation. Let's see how this one plays itself out. Thank you so much. Do appreciate your time this afternoon. That was Lebo Ramafoko, Executive Director at Oxfam and GBV expert.